to the Queens of the DMV podcast, Real Talk and Real Estate. My name is Ariel, and I'm here with my co-host this afternoon, Cher Castillo.
Hey, guys.
And Arnita Greene. Follow us on IG, Queens of the DMV, and YouTube. Listen to our podcast weekly on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and look out for every episode on Thursdays via YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Today, I'd like to introduce a special guest. We went to VSU together. Her name is Sasha Nicole, and she is a mental health advocate. Today, our topic is maintaining your mental health amidst COVID career and commitments. And we're going to dive right in today. Hey, Sasha.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to see you all.
Yes, it's been a while since we've connected, but I wanted to bring you on today for this very serious and just important topic that we want to talk about today, and it's mental health. Can you talk a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So as mentioned, I'm Sasha Nicole. And so a lot of my purpose and mission is I try to help women who desire to be more confident and courageous. I do that through motivational videos, courses, keynote speeches. And I'm mainly just trying to encourage people to unlock what's making them uncomfortable in life so that they're not feeling helpless, but really starting the journey of healing and becoming whole in every aspect of their life.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we have a couple questions for you today, and hopefully we can, dive right into some serious topics that everybody, kind of wonders about or might not have much information on. Can you tell us a little bit how you got started in creating this atmosphere for women?
So for me, it started when I had my daughter. So this was about almost 10 years ago, and I had really bad postpartum depression. I had thoughts of actually killing her after I had her. I had no connection. And so in experiencing that and not having anyone, especially of color, to relate to talk to, it prompted me to start a nonprofit organization to help other women of color. And through that, and just honing in on my voice and my experience, and then just dealing with other mental health issues in general, I have depression and anxiety. It just allowed me to just start speaking and being transparent and authentic about the things that I was struggling with, about depression, about taking an antidepressant, all of those things. And throughout the years, I've just honed in on that and continue to speak and be an advocate for those who are also going through the same experience.
What allowed you, Sasha, to become transparent during your journey? Because, a lot of times people are embarrassed to share their stories, although it's so helpful to the rest of the world to hear stories like yours.
Yeah, as cliche as it sounds, it would be those moments where I'd share, my story, especially like, for example, my story of obesity, overcoming obesity. I was 400 pounds at one point. And in sharing like those experiences, people would come in my inbox and say, this really helped me, or this changed my life. Or I remember one time I was talking with someone and she mentioned that she wanted to commit suicide. But after talking with me and just, really talking about the things that she was going through and feeling like she had someone to talk to, she said that she didn't go home and kill herself that night. And so in getting responses like that, it really helped me say, okay, I have a mission. There's a purpose for me. There's a purpose for me to keep sharing. It is hard to be transparent. And I understand why a lot of people don't, because you set yourself up for the world to criticize when you share those type of things. So it's not easy, but I see the results of how it helps people rather than, even if I may get criticism or how it may hurt me, I see the vast majority that are being helped and who are seeking their own transparency so that they can share what's going on in their life.
I think it's hard too for people to seek help. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't think that they have a problem. And it's just hard to, seek professional help. And so how do you know that it's time to really seek professional help?
I think you have to think about, for example, one of the things they tell you in experiencing signs of depression is that when you no longer enjoy the things that you used to enjoy, When you wake up and you feel and you're having constant or consistent thoughts of not wanting to be here, when the littlest things that used to make you happy don't make you happy any longer, when you're constantly feeling, a different change of moods or irritability, these are things that you should look for, and signs more so that's telling you, it's giving you information. A lot of times our body is giving us information to what we're feeling or pinpointing certain experiences or trauma. We have to pay attention to the information that we're receiving to then be able to get help for it. So just acknowledging like, man, I've been really irritable these past few days, or man, I've had a lot of thoughts that I wouldn't normally have. Those are things to look for.
And is there a difference between, because I know a lot of people this time of year suffer from seasonal depression. Like, how do you know the difference between seasonal depression and, like, I guess, continuous or regular depression?
So with seasonal depression, you definitely will take into account, like there are a lot of people I know, once winter came, they just felt, completely different than what they felt in the summer. So a lot of times it's going to be a battle of experience, right? So if you're talking to a counselor or you're talking to a psychiatrist, they're going to ask you, what are the things that you felt consistently? And so did you feel this? Have you felt this way all the time? Or have you felt this way only during these times? Or did you only feel this way from a trigger? So for some people, like the holidays is a trigger of depression for them because they've lost loved ones during that time, things of that nature. And so that's how you're really going to tell, is through that experience of when was the onset and how long did it last, and what were the exact feelings that you had. Because if you were just kind of feeling like, oh, I just kind of feel down, I don't really want to go out the house, I maybe just want to eat a little bit more. Usually that's a little bit more, it's a seasonal thing. But when it's the consistency of, I cannot pick myself back up, that's different.
Okay.
Yeah, I like when you said that it's hard when you can't pick yourself back up, then it's time to seek help.
Right.
And how do you feel that, we're in the midst of a pandemic still, even though things have lightened up a bit, there's still various restrictions and fear that's keeping a lot of people still inside the house and not socializing as much. How do you think COVID-19 is affecting everyone's mental health?
I think COVID-19 has literally impacted everyone's mental health. I don't care, from introvert to extrovert to a person who wasn't depressed to a person who was. I think everyone has been impacted by this in some way, whether it was with your career, whether it's with personal life, relationships. This has really impacted people across the board. And so especially minorities, or especially those who are in impoverished communities. So I think that, for me, for example, I was a little bit more of an extrovert, and COVID has really impacted me to be more of an introvert, because it's like now I'll have even more social anxiety around a lot of people. Whereas before it was like, I couldn't wait to just kind of be the life of the party, but I've been so secluded that I've grown to kind of like the seclusion now a little bit. And so I think that COVID has also, the positives about it though, and I always try to think about, well, what's the flip side? How do I reframe my thought from the negativity that I felt from it? Because there were things that I lost. A lot of people lost things with COVID. Is what did you gain? So like, I started a new business in COVID. I started more counseling in COVID, or I learned how to be more creative, because when you can't go anywhere, you have to be more creative. And so just really trying to reframe the thought about it I think could be helpful for people who have really been impacted.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because I'm a super extrovert, but I've found myself like getting used to the introvertedness of being in the midst of a pandemic. And I mean, forcing myself to kind of go back out there and do things that I would normally do so regularly. I'm
Right.
like, okay, of course I would, host an event, or, go out with my girlfriends, or whatever the case is. And now I'm like, well, I don't know. Like I'm kind of questioning certain things where it wasn't a question before.
Yeah, it's
So I
really
also
changed
have
the
to
feelings.
readapt.
Right. That's a great word, readapting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have some friends that have started complaining about working from home. At first it was like, oh, I want to, this is great, blah, 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 and now they're like, okay, I go hours without talking to people. or being social,
Mm-hmm.
versus being in the office and, being right next to someone else in the cubicle or being able to go to lunch with people. I think it just has its pros and cons. And after a while, you need a little variety. But,
Yeah.
some people are even complaining about working from home now.
Yeah, I've seen some of the people who have wanted to go back into the office. I gotta say, I'm one of those who at first I wanted to go, but now again, like I've gotten so accustomed that I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back in the office. So it's kind of that damned if you do, damned if you don't thing with the working from home.
Yeah.
The wintertime is also bad because we're stuck in it's cold. In summertime, although we have to work from home, you can get out and take a walk because that helps, with your mental health. But in the wintertime, it's just so cold to go outside and walk. So it's good to stay active too.
Yes. The exercise definitely helps with the endorphins, and just really moving your body along is something that is crucial, and that, we do have to pay attention to matter of our mental health, because we talk about like foods and diet and all of that, and exercise, like it does matter. Like it does tremendously make a difference.
So Sasha, what are some of the ways that do you think that we could be supportive of each other during a time like this where, people, well, A, it's winter, but B, it's a pandemic still too. Are there certain things that we can do in terms of, checking on loved ones? You mentioned diet and exercise. Like, what are some tips that we can share with our audience about supporting each other so we don't have, more mental health breakdowns, or if we've gotten out of them, to not go back there?
Right. It's two parts. One, in terms of supporting other people, I think you have to really honestly show up. Like you have to be able to show up the same way that you want someone to show up for you. And so that what that means is that really giving that support. If someone comes to you and they say that they're feeling down, I think we have to start taking it a little bit more seriously. Not even, and I shouldn't even say a little bit. We need to start taking it seriously, and we need to start not comparing what may seem as though they should get over it, as opposed to maybe how you might feel about it. So sometimes, like what may impact you may not impact the next person, and vice versa. So it's very important to do the best that you can to reserve that judgment and truly just be there and show up for whoever you consider as your friend, counterpart, whatever that may look like for you. Because we do get caught in this, well, that's not that big of a deal. You shouldn't feel down about that. Or, you have nothing to be stressed about, or you have all of these things. Why are you so depressed? And people really think that these things are, the pillar of what is really making someone have good mental health or not. And it's not. And a lot of times these same people that you think have everything, they feel alone. And as you've seen, like with recently Miss USA, I can't speak for unfortunately Regina King's son, who both of these people who just committed suicide, and the outside world would think that they have no reason to. But the demons that we often face internally is not something that can be seen externally. I think for ourselves, we have to really take a moment. We talk about like the meditation, the yoga, but meditation, like taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to just reflect, taking a moment to do gratitude, it does help, even if it's just like a minute or two a day. I know that for a lot of people, it might be a foreign concept. Like, how do I think about gratitude, or what am I supposed to reflect on? And it could just be sitting in a moment of silence, like really just being silent for a second and just thinking about what you want your day to be like, or how was your day the previous day? What changes can you make? And so these are just little things that you could do to not only be supportive to someone else, but then also supportive to yourself. Because the more that you work on healing and honing in on yourself, the better that you can show up for other people.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. I would also say being intentional about that more so, because
that's a great word.
It's hard, if you're going through something. And what I would say is just trying to be intentional about, gratitude and looking at the brighter things, or what's going good, because a lot of times people look at more negative than good.
Yeah, a lot of times people do think more about the negative than the positive. There was a quote someone told me that they always like to do. They say every morning they count their blessings twice because they know they probably missed one. And I like that because we do, as Arnita said, we often we don't think about all of the great things that we may have going on as opposed to the things that we, that we don't. And that's in her word, intentional. That's something that we have to be intentional about what we have. And some people, think that they don't have anything, but I assure you that there are people who love you. There are people who, will be there for you. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking.
Yeah. And I loved what you said, Sasha. I think it's such a good point, and I think I'm guilty of looking, at certain people that way too. It's like they seem like they have everything in the world that you could ever imagine that you wanted, yet you can't quite understand what they have to be sad about, but you really don't know their past and you really don't know their internal demons. So it is important to take a step back and try to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, their shoes may seem like amazing shoes, but we really don't know what it's made up of. And that's really hard to do when you're looking from the outside, versus the inside.
Right.
I want to say that just, kind of reiterate some of the things that you all have said. I also think that social media impacts this part of things because you're looking at the stuff that someone posts and they might not be a person that puts their business on the internet, and they could be really going through it. I tend to do that. Like my mom has been in the hospital for the last, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and you would never know because I didn't post anything about it.
Right.
So it's just like, sometimes, social media is seen as a highlight reel, and you really can't see what's really going on in that person's life that may cause or bring on some type of mental health issues or depression. So it's just good. I've come to a rule that, if you cross my mind, I'm going to reach out to you. And I've learned to do that because I've lost people in the midst of thinking about them and say, oh, I'll call her tomorrow. And then she's gone or he's gone. So I've gotten into the habit that if someone crosses my mind, I reach out to them and, just see how they're doing and check on them just because, I thought of them. And it's, making, things a little better as far as, checking on your friends, checking on your strong friends, because those are the people that, seem to everyone else that they don't need help or they don't need anyone checking on them. So, that's just what I've gotten into the habit of doing. But I love, what you all are saying.
Right. No, those are great points, especially just doing it now. When you think about it, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
So Sasha, you have a new ebook called Detour to Destination. Tell us a little bit about that.
So essentially, I took pieces, not everything, but I took pieces of my life, and I wanted to really help people have a guide to navigating obstacles, overcoming fear, and basically having a clear path towards their goals and how to take the steps to get there, silencing the negative thoughts. So as I mentioned earlier, when you have that negative thought, how do you reprogram that thought? How do you reframe that thought? And you have to always ask yourself, are those thoughts serving you? And then just talking about removing the weight of past traumas, reclaiming your inner power, and then just realizing one's potential so that they can achieve the aspirations that they have. So I share a lot of my personal stories. So as I mentioned, obesity earlier, domestic violence, a lot of different things that I share and how I've overcome those things and really just hoping to lead the way and for a path for other people to also overcome whatever barriers that they may be going through as well.
And how would we purchase your ebook?
So you can go to my website at www.fearlessinfluence.com, and influence is spelled with an N without the I. And when you go there, you can click buy my ebook, and it's only $7. So you can grab that. It'll immediately be sent to you. You can also purchase it on Kindle as well. So Kindle, my website, you can get that, or you can follow me at The Real Sasha Nicole on IG. And if you click my link in my bio, you'll be able to click the button to buy it there as well.
Yes, because
We're
we
definitely going to support you. You know, us Trojans, that's what we do.
I appreciate that. I definitely need the support. I have a lot of different things coming out, some courses coming out. So please definitely appreciate the support. And so absolutely. Thank you.
That's awesome. And it is the first day of Black History Month. So we do want to support all Black businesses, especially this month.
Absolutely. You can buy some merch too for everyone who's listening, your audience, mental health t-shirts and hoodies that I design, professional design. So you can check that out as well. So yes, definitely support the Black owned businesses. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, please continue to watch the Queens of the DMV on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And until next time, we look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you so much. It was great seeing you all. I look forward to it. And I really appreciate being on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha.
Bye. Ladies, this is my line sister, Nicole.
Hello.
And Nicole, if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, I am Nicole Cammack. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I do a few things. I work with veterans providing mental health treatment, so individual, group, couples. I also am the president and CEO of Black Mental Wellness Corporation. We are a group of clinical psychologists who provide information, resources, and trainings about mental health from a Black perspective. So we have training programs where we work with graduate and undergraduate students. We put on an annual conference, and then we also do workshops and things with different corporations.
That's awesome. And where would everyone find you and your organization?
So you can go to our website, blackmentalwellness.com. On our website, we have a ton of free information and resources about mental health, coping and wellness, different types of coping strategies, resources that you may find helpful. And you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Black Mental Wellness.
So Nicole, what inspired you to get into mental health, especially with a focus on the Black community?
Yeah, I love working with people. And honestly, it just sort of organically happened. A sixth grade teacher told me I would be good at being a psychologist. And he told me he was leaving teaching to be a psychologist and make money. And I was like, oh, I could do that. But honestly, it was like once I got into undergrad and then in graduate school and just seeing the disparities in mental health as it relates to different communities, I knew that was where my passion was and what I needed to do. But what really started with like pushing full steam ahead, I was working on a military base and I was working with primarily the Black service members and really trying to provide information about like, oh, you're experiencing depression or this is anxiety, and constantly being told like, oh, no, I'm not depressed. I'm just, stressed. And I'm like, oh, no, this is depression. It just looks differently in Black people. And I wanted resources to speak to that. And all I had were like articles from graduate school, which they don't really translate to the everyday community. So I literally printed out articles from Essence and Ebony magazine about the Black Superwoman syndrome. And I was like giving it to Black women, like, you need to read this and understand how you can still be successful, still do all of the things and be depressed. And here are some reasons why. And it really just, sort of like motivated me to say, if these resources aren't there, I'm going to create it myself.
That's amazing. So I know mental health, it's become a definitely more popular issue overall, but especially in the Black and Brown community. In the last few years, I've seen a big push for it on social media. How do you define mental health in this day and age? Because historically, it's like you had mental health issues if you had some type of learning disability or if you had something more severe like a schizophrenia or, multiple personality disorder, that sort of thing. But they really never touched on more basic things that affect us, like anxiety and, certain forms of depression. How has mental health, evolved you would say in the last few years or last decade?
That's a great question. I think some of it too, if we think about it just in totality of like that we think about mental health in the same way that we think about our health, is that it's, to start off, it's just the way that we take care of ourselves. What are you doing to better how you're feeling mentally as you think about like stress you're dealing with, exhaustion, the day-to-day stressors you might be encountering? What are those things you're doing just to maintain your overall mental health in the same way that you would think about your health? So health wise, we often think about like exercise and eating right and going to your doctor's appointments. And we all could take care of our mental health. You don't have to have a diagnosis for that to be true. And so that could be, are you journaling? Are you in tune with your stressors and how do you manage them? Are you exercising? Because I truly believe that total health, like your physical health and mental health, go hand in hand. It could be, are you talking about or acknowledging the things that you're experiencing? So that's a part of the mental health. And then the thing that I think it's a lot of stigma is actually having a diagnosis or going into the mental illness aspect or thinking about different mental health disorders. And so that would be where we think about anxiety, depression, trauma. It could be schizophrenia, so some of our more severe mental illnesses. And that's where I feel like people are a little more like they don't want to touch that. What I have noticed is that people will talk about mental health, and in Black and Brown communities, it almost feels more acceptable to say like, "Oh, I have trauma."
Mm-hmm.
Or I have like anxiety, and then it sort of cuts off there.
Exactly.
People don't want to acknowledge the range of ways that they're experiencing different mental health related concerns. So even depression, like I said, mentioned with the military service members, it was hard to get people to admit like, oh, I'm feeling depressed. And I think some of that is because there's this myth or this sort of untruth that we can control all things related to mental health. So, historically, it's like, well, if you're depressed, then are you praying as much as you should? Are you trusting in God? Are you doing more than you are doing now to change things? And I often think like you must have never seen someone who is like severely depressed and can't get out of bed, because prayer alone is not enough.
It's not enough. I'm so glad you say that. I could say my mom. She says all the time, "Have you prayed about it, Arnita?" And she says it all the time. And I'm thinking, sometimes that's just not enough. And I grew up in the church, but sometimes it's just not enough. So hit that right on the right.
People say it all the time. And the frustrating part is like, even in therapy, I feel like for Black and Brown people, they even apologize when they're crying in therapy, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be crying. I shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, well, where else would you do it if not therapy? And why not? And having those conversations with people about, I believe in God too. I pray, but that doesn't mean I don't still go to the doctor. When something is wrong, I need to go to the dentist to figure out why my tooth is hurting. I'm not praying it away. And I feel like for so many people, the lesson has been, just pray about it or keep it internal. And I do want to acknowledge that there are like these historical contexts related to all of this. So if we think about in Black communities, you keep things internal because there was the fear of, if you truly express what you're feeling or going through, someone may take your kids or people are going to label you as crazy. And so much of that stuff, it just still continues in our community. So even in therapy, a lot of the work is like fighting the stigma, because people in the session are feeling this internal battle about being there.
Yeah, they're ashamed. And and we were taught that really, within the culture. And I was taught that in both cultures, Black culture and Latino culture. It's like, you're weaker if you go to therapy. Like, why do you need to go to therapy? Talk to like pray about it, as you guys were saying. And prayer is not going to do it all for you. And it's like, how do you get beyond those stigmas? Because I even saw something on social media the other day that my girlfriend sent me, and I was like, this is so true. And it was like a meme breakdown of like different celebrity Black men like Kanye, Kevin Hart, and like a couple of people. And it was basically how people were making fun of them when they had these mental breakdowns. And it's like, okay, you guys are making fun of Black men, saying, they basically they can't be vulnerable. They can't have moments of weaknesses, like, and why is that? Why can't they? Everybody else does. And so how do we get beyond those stigmas so people can feel comfortable being in a place where they can express themselves and say, I don't feel right. I do have anxiety. I do need antidepressants. Like, how do we help people get there?
Yeah, I saw that meme and it kind of broke my heart because it's like you could go back to each of those moments like, oh, wow, people did sort of like single them out and make fun of them and they became memes for expressing something in that vulnerable moment. And
Mm-hmm.
then what happens when people see that? And as you're thinking about other Black men, it's like, this is why it's not safe to express. This is why I'm going to hold my feelings in because I don't want people to use it against me. I don't want to be made fun of. I don't want to appear as if I'm weak. And I like to shift that narrative in saying it actually takes a lot of strength to face the things that you would rather not deal with. Like going to therapy, talking about the things that are like the deepest, most vulnerable parts of yourself takes strength because it also takes trust to even go to that place.
Wow.
And so, in the other way of how people can sort of like shame you for expressing your emotions, I think that shifting the narrative is talking about it. And that's something that's happening in this generation. And I'll tell you, in my work with veterans, I'm seeing it sort of come out with them. So, younger people being able to say, oh, I go to therapy, or my therapist said this, or I worked on this week, or just in general conversation talking about therapy or being open and supportive of mental health, it opens up the door for other people. So I work with veterans who are in their 70s and 60s, late 60s, and they're like, oh, well, my grandchild said, she was talking about therapy so much, I figured I would give it a chance. That's how you open up doors. Or when people start to see changes that you're making in therapy, so like that, oh, you, what you talk about, oh, you learned that, or they start to notice those differences, it doesn't seem like this scary thing anymore. And that was honestly a huge part of what led to Black mental wellness, because people would come to the therapy sessions and be like, a Black psychologist, I didn't know they existed. And it was like, okay, what if we highlighted the diversity in the field? What if we show people who look like you, who come from communities or may have had experiences like you? I'm not excluded from hardships or like having my share of stressors or my low days. But if I can be transparent and show you the work that I'm doing, or show you the different ways that people are in the mental health field making a difference, it could sort of normalize it and make it not seem like this scary thing.
That's a good point. I mean, my girlfriends used to make fun of me back in my 20s because I love a therapist. Okay. Like,
Mhm.
I will go to a therapist. If something feels remotely off, I am like, it's time to go to my therapist. I need to get it out. Like, and it's funny because I feel like that has helped me live such a more balanced life. And all those people that were laughing at me, their asses are in therapy right now. Catching up on 20 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's
Nicole,
amazing.
how does one manage their mental health while having a career?
Ooh, that's a good one
Mhm.
because part of it, I mean, and I guess the first part is I'm really big on staying in tune with yourself. So,
Mhm.
in order for you to be able to manage anything, to balance anything, you have to know, how am I feeling? What am I experiencing? When is my stress higher? What do I need in this moment? And part of doing that is having those quiet moments to yourself. So, I'm really big on starting my day with just me. I cannot start my day in the busyness of anyone else. So many of us just go, 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 go. And when you do that, it pulls you further away from yourself. Right. So, like, I feel like when you're more at peace, when you're more aware and doing the things that feed you, when that stress is all over the place, you're also more aware of that. There are so many of us who are on autopilot, and I'm guilty of that a lot of times too. But I have to bring it back. So the first thing is centering yourself. What helps you feel centered and grounded? For me, it's having that quiet time in the morning, is working out, is doing yoga, it's having meditation, it's writing in a journal. And it's not me doing all of those things at one time. But if you look at any given week, I might be doing some of those things. That is what keep me centered. The second part is recognizing, how do you incorporate things in your schedule so that it fits with work and not overwhelming yourself. So, if it's exercise, how many days a week feels good and authentic and it doesn't burden you? How many, if you can go to therapy, there are some people who go every week. There are some people who are like, I can come only every 2 to 3 weeks, but at least it's scheduled. What does that look like for you? What are those other coping strategies? Like, what are your hobbies? How are you connecting with other people? And just really looking at your schedule and seeing, how do I fit those things in? And then the other piece is looking at work, and depending on your job, it's, like, how do you create those boundaries around work? Because sometimes you might take on way more than you should, and I have to tell myself and remind myself, even just because I can do something doesn't mean that I should. And then I had to start, especially during COVID, because everything was virtual. It was like, of course I can do this, I'm at home, or I can do that, I can do this. And I was like feeling more depleted at home than I was traveling. So then I had to start to ask myself, for everything that I say yes to, what am I saying no to? And sometimes it's rest. Sometimes it's time with my daughter. Sometimes, it might be taking care of things in the house. But everything that you're saying yes to is taking you away from something. And how do you make sure that it's worth it? And I get it. Life happens. There are going to be busy times, but you do want to have these sort of thoughts and patterns in place where you can check in with yourself. And that's, again, why those quiet moments are really important. So I'm big on the beginning of the day, anchoring your day at the beginning and the end of the day. Check in with you. If you did too much that day, what can you take off of your plate? What can you give to someone else to handle? When giving people other tasks to do, some people still want to sort of like micromanage and go through all the parts. Like, if I ask you to do something, I'm going to expect it to be done, and I got to leave it alone. It's done. Or even when I asked my daughter to clean up, if it's not the way that I would have done it, she did what I asked, and I'm gonna leave it alone, because that's just like one less thing on the plate.
Talk about that one a little bit.
That's a hard one.
Like, we totally understand exactly what you mean.
But those are some ways to create balance. And like, if you have, the other thing that I'll do is, like, if I have a really busy week, then I try to be intentional about having a lighter week, or at least a day or something where I can sort of like decompress and get it back together, so that you're creating balance, like, overall. And that helps take care of your mental health in the process.
I liked what you said about checking in with you. Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna check in with me.
I said the same thing. I'm about to book, when this is done, I'm booking my spa appointment.
Yes.
And it's sad. My daughter bought me a spa gift card last Christmas. I never used it, y'all. I never went to the spa or did something like that for myself all 2021. That's ridiculous. So
yes. Schedule it today. Like, you need to get it. And then at least if it's scheduled, it keeps you accountable to yourself.
Definitely. I'm gonna get it together.
Now that we're in the midst of a pandemic, Nicole, what advice do you have for those people who, they're living alone, they don't have kids, they may not have family nearby? Like, what are some coping mechanisms or what can they be doing right now to, maintain their mental health during a time like this?
Well, that's a good question, because there are so many people who are experiencing like that loneliness and those feelings of isolation.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, especially when we're thinking about mental health, I feel like that isolation is dangerous. It's like, connection is important, touch is important, being around people is important. So like, figuring out what are those ways that you can still connect, even if it's not always in the physical. Could you go, like, especially now, or when the weather is nicer, like, even if it's like joining a group, and it may not be people you know, but it's an outlet for you to be around people or to make new connections. You still want to maintain your own health and wellness. So how do you get out of the house? Like that is a big thing for people. They stay in the house still, and it's like you need sunlight, you need fresh air, you need a change of scenery. Can you do that? If you're working virtually, can you go somewhere else and work for the day? Like it doesn't, just because we're working from home doesn't mean it has to be from home. You can work anywhere. So where else could you go? What are those hobbies that you have? How do you get connected back to those things? What activities do you feel safe doing? Do you feel safe? Some people, if you still want to travel, do it. Like if you have family in another city, maybe scheduling that so that you at least have something to look forward to. Having, FaceTime calls or video calls are good ways. And then I'm big on like doing things with yourself. So if people aren't around, what can you do to show yourself love? What's your favorite restaurant to go to? Go get the meal. Like what if it's food, exercise. I'm really big on like remembering like when you felt your best, what were you doing? So when you felt happiest, when you felt fulfilled, when you weren't thinking or lost in just being alone, what were you doing? Who were you with? Where were you? Can you add some of that to your schedule? And those are some ways. The isolation is hard for a lot of people. And maybe the connections are not with, your friends or family in the way that you want, but are there other ways? So I had someone, even they have like those meetup groups where you might do an activity or something. That's a good way of still being active and being in a group setting so you don't always feel alone. And then it's also reminding yourself that you're not alone. So sometimes, even though physically you may be by yourself, like, are there people who still love you and care for you? How can you be reminded about that? And how do you still, even virtually, maintain those connections?
I like that. I just have to say your voice is very soothing. I feel like I'm in a therapy session right now. It's very tranquil.
I'm ready to sit on the couch.
Nicole, you mentioned, keeping track of things that make you feel good or whole, or would you say that journaling is the best way to keep track? I'm asking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know, how do I keep track of when I feel my best? Because it might have been 2 weeks ago or a month ago, and I might not remember. Like, hey, I really did enjoy that, or what have you. So, what can I do, or what can our audience, people that are listening, do to keep track of things that make them feel good, or things that help their mental health?
Oh, I love that question. So I love journaling. I think it's great. You definitely could write it out. And the beautiful part about journaling is you can go back and reread. So those times that you might forget, it's like, oh, yes, I did used to do that. Sometimes it could just be having that quiet time to yourself. Turn the TV off, turn everything off, and just think back. When was the last time I really felt happy? What was I doing? How did I know I was happy in that moment? What about that moment gave me those feelings? And then just going through, and you can list it. And you can also put these things in your phone. You can start a folder on your phone of pictures to remember.
To say pictures. I know Arnita does it. She takes a lot of pictures, and I realize that when she's in the moment, she's taking them.
Yep. And put it in a folder to remind yourself. So I have a folder like motivation. I have a folder like relaxation. The beach is my happy place. So when I'm at the beach, I like always record audio, like video. So I can, when I need those moments of just like, girl, bring it back, I can listen to that. But those are some of the things, or you can think back to like people. There are some people that when they leave the room or you leave with them, you feel good about yourself. Make a mental note. Who are those people that your mood goes up when they're around? Because those are the people you want to spend more time around. And then as you start to like reflect on those things, you can keep track of it in any of those ways. And when you're having a low moment or a stressful moment, or you just need to maintain your mood, pick from one of the things. Okay, well, I remember the last time I went here, I felt really good. Let me, schedule my spa date. or, it's been a while, let me go on a trip because I know when I'm on a trip, I have more time to myself. Whatever those things are, you sort of building up a toolkit in that way so that you always have access. And I like the idea of writing it or tracking it in some way, because in the moment when that stress is high, you forget. Because all you're focusing on is that negative feeling, that low mood, that anxiety, the stress, all of the things. And it takes you so far away that it's like, I don't remember the last time I felt happy. Well, you got a reminder. So go pick those things up and do it.
And it was just probably last week.
Well, Nicole, how can we support you and the Black Mental Health Network?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram or go to our website. We are always putting out information we're always putting out information because to us it is important. We're always, especially on social media, we'd like to stay current with what's happening. If you know of any students who are interested in a career in mental health, around March or April, May, somewhere up in the spring, we put out a call for applications where we connect graduate students and undergraduate students with a mentor in the mental health field, because it is important for us to diversify the field. And then keep talking about mental health, keep talking about your positive experiences in therapy, the things that have helped you when you've had those difficult moments, because that's how we begin to shift that stigma in our community.
Well, you are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please share the Queens of the DMV with all your friends and family. And check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast every Thursday at 5 p.m. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you.